From a title inspired by ketchup bottles to Wesley Snipes' mysterious vanishing acne, this 90s action thriller hides some truly bizarre secrets behind its high-altitude heroics. The movie that launched Snipes as an action star contains everything from geographic impossibilities to soundtrack mysteries that even die-hard fans have never discovered. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Passenger 57. Fact 1. Title named after ketchup bottle. The title, Passenger 57, came from one of the most unexpected sources in Hollywood history: a condiment bottle sitting on a table. Director Stuart Raphael was struggling to find the right name for his action thriller about a hijacked airplane when inspiration struck in the most ordinary way possible. Raphael had been working on the script for what would become Wesley Snipes' breakout action film, but despite having a solid story about terrorists taking over a commercial flight, he couldn't settle on a title that captured the right feel. The original concept was quite different from what audiences eventually saw in 1992. Raphael had initially written the screenplay as a starring vehicle for someone like Clint Eastwood, featuring a grieving father traveling to Spain to bury his son, who gets caught up in an airplane hijacking by Iranian terrorists. As Raphael sat trying to brainstorm titles, he happened to notice a bottle of Heinz 57 ketchup nearby. The famous 57 varieties slogan on the bottle caught his attention, and something about that number clicked in his mind. He realized that Passenger 57 had the perfect ring for an action movie. It was specific enough to feel real and mysterious enough to make audiences curious about which passenger would be the hero. The irony of this naming story is that the Heinz 57 number itself has no real meaning behind it. The company never actually had 57 varieties of products when they started using the slogan in 1896, and the number was essentially chosen for marketing purposes because company founder Henry Heinz thought it sounded appealing. So a movie title inspired by a meaningless marketing number ended up launching Wesley Snipes into action stardom and becoming one of the most recognizable airplane thriller titles of the 1990s. Fact 2. Stallone's character Easter egg. Hidden inside Passenger 57 is a playful tribute to the action star who almost played the lead role but walked away from what would become Wesley Snipes' career-defining moment. The writers embedded a clever inside joke by naming one of the major characters Sly, as a direct reference to Sylvester Stallone's famous nickname. Before Wesley Snipes ever stepped foot on the airplane set, the script was originally developed with Sylvester Stallone in mind for the role of John Cutter, the tough airline security expert who saves the day. This was during the early 1990s when Stallone was at the height of his action movie fame, coming off successes like Rocky and Rambo. The producers thought he would be perfect for another high-octane thriller about fighting terrorists on a hijacked plane. However, Stallone made what many consider one of the biggest career mistakes in Hollywood history when he turned down Passenger 57 to make Stop or My Mom Will Shoot instead. That comedy with Estelle Getty turned out to be both a critical disaster and a box office bomb, while Passenger 57 became a major hit that launched Wesley Snipes into action stardom. Rather than completely rewrite the script after losing Stallone, the writers decided to have some fun with the situation. They named Tom Sizemore's character Sly Del Vecchio, who plays Cutter's old friend and the person who offers him the airline security job that sets the entire plot in motion. The name Sly was their way of acknowledging that this character represents the connection to what the movie might have been if Stallone had accepted the role. This kind of inside Hollywood joke was fairly common in the 1990s, when screenwriters often included subtle references to casting changes or development stories that only industry insiders would understand, making it a fun Easter egg for those who knew the behind-the-scenes story. Fact 3. High school students as extras. Wesley Snipes turned his homecoming to Orlando into an opportunity to reward academic excellence when he offered his former high school students a chance to appear in Passenger 57, but only if they had the grades to prove they deserved it. During filming in Central Florida, Snipes made a special visit to Jones High School, where he had been a student before his family moved and his acting career took off. The visit wasn't just a casual trip down memory lane for the rising action star. Snipes had a specific mission in mind that combined his Hollywood success with his belief in education. He announced to the students that he would offer paid roles as movie extras, but there was an important catch that made this opportunity different from typical casting calls. Only students who had high grade point averages would be eligible for consideration, making academic performance the key requirement for getting into the movie. The school administration worked with Snipes to identify all the students who met the academic requirements, and these honor students were placed on a special list. Rather than choosing favorites or holding auditions, the selection process was completely fair and random. Names were drawn from the list of qualified students, giving everyone with good grades an equal chance to participate in the Hollywood production happening in their hometown. The lucky students who were selected can be seen in one of the movie's most exciting sequences, the carnival chase scene where John Cutter pursues the terrorists through a crowded fair. If you watch carefully during this action-packed sequence, you'll spot these Orlando high school students among the crowd of fairgoers, representing some of the brightest academic minds at Jones High School. After filming wrapped up, Snipes even shared lunch with the student extras, giving them a chance to talk with a Hollywood star and learn about the movie business. This gesture showed how Snipes valued both education and his connection to his Orlando roots. Fact 4. Wesley's visible acne continuity error. Movie fans with sharp eyes can actually figure out the exact filming order of Passenger 57 by paying close attention to Wesley Snipes' face throughout the movie, thanks to a skin condition that created one of the most unusual continuity errors in action movie history. During the 6-week production period from January to February of 1992, Snipes was dealing with severe acne problems that the makeup department couldn't completely hide. The most noticeable issue was a large, prominent boil that kept appearing on the right side of Snipes' face, particularly visible on his cheek. This created a unique situation where viewers can literally track which scenes were filmed on which days by watching whether the blemish is present or not. When the boil appears in a scene, you know that footage was shot during the earlier part of production when his skin condition was at its worst. The continuity problem became even more obvious because many scenes had to be reshot for various reasons, and by the time they went back to film these additional takes, Snipes' skin condition had either improved or changed. This means that even within the same scene, the boil might disappear and reappear depending on which shots were from the original filming day and which were from later reshoots. The filmmakers became so aware of this issue that they started deliberately shooting Snipes from his left side whenever possible, to avoid showing his right profile where the blemish was most prominent. Despite the makeup team's best efforts to cover the problem areas, the harsh lighting required for action sequences made it nearly impossible to completely hide the skin issues. At the ticket counter scene early in the movie, the boil is particularly visible and large, indicating this was filmed during one of the worst periods of his skin problems. Throughout the rest of the film, careful viewers can use this unusual visual cue to piece together the actual production timeline. Fact 5. The same blonde passenger escapes 3 times. One of the most glaring continuity errors in Passenger 57 involves a blonde woman who somehow manages to escape from the hijacked airplane not once, not twice, but 3 separate times throughout the movie. This mysterious passenger, dressed in a distinctive hot pink top, dark jacket, and miniskirt, appears to have either supernatural powers or access to a secret teleportation device that lets her keep getting back on the plane just so she can escape again. The error first occurs when the terrorists release the initial group of 100 hostages as part of their negotiation strategy with law enforcement on the ground. Among this first wave of freed passengers walking down the airplane stairs, viewers can clearly spot the blonde woman in her eye-catching outfit making her way to safety. This seems normal enough. She's been released and is presumably heading home to tell everyone about her terrifying experience. However, this same woman reappears during the second hostage release later in the film, once again walking down those airplane stairs wearing the exact same hot pink top and miniskirt combination. At this point, eagle-eyed viewers might start wondering how she managed to get back on the plane after already being released, but the continuity problems don't stop there. The blonde passenger makes her third and final escape at the very end of the movie, when members of the press surround the aircraft to question the FBI agents and document the aftermath of the crisis. Once again, there she is, exiting the plane in her unmistakable outfit, as if this is her first time leaving the aircraft. This triple escape act represents the kind of continuity oversight that happens when multiple scenes are filmed on different days with the same background actors, and the editing team doesn't catch that the same person appears in situations where they logically shouldn't be present. The woman's bright clothing makes her particularly easy to spot, turning what should have been an invisible background detail into a noticeable movie mistake. Fact 6. Louisiana geography mistake. The props department for Passenger 57 made a glaring geographical error that reveals they didn't do their homework about Louisiana's unique political structure, creating a mistake that any resident of the state would immediately notice. During the carnival chase scene, a large banner prominently displays Lake Lucille County Fair, which sounds perfectly normal until you realize that Louisiana doesn't have counties like every other state in America. Louisiana is the only state in the United States that uses a completely different system of local government divisions called parishes instead of counties. This unusual structure dates back to the state's French and Spanish colonial history, when the territory was organized around Catholic Church parishes rather than the English county system used in other American colonies. When Louisiana became a state, it kept this distinctive parish system, making it unique among all 50 states. The banner mistake becomes even more obvious when you consider that the movie specifically establishes that the hijacked plane has landed in Louisiana, and that all the ground-level action is taking place in this fictional Louisiana town of Lake Lucille. Any local resident watching the movie would immediately recognize that something was wrong with that banner, since they would never see anything advertising a county fair in their state. This kind of error typically happens when production designers and prop makers are working quickly and rely on their general knowledge of how things work in most of America without researching the specific quirks of the location where their story is supposed to take place. Since 49 out of 50 states use counties, it's an easy assumption to make. But it's exactly the kind of detail that breaks the illusion for viewers who actually live in Louisiana. The mistake is particularly noticeable because the banner appears clearly on screen during an important action sequence, giving viewers plenty of time to read the text and spot the geographical impossibility that reveals the filmmakers didn't understand Louisiana's unique parish system. Fact 7. Missing soundtrack main theme. One of the strangest decisions in movie soundtrack history happened when the official Passenger 57 album was released without the most important piece of music from the entire film, the main title theme that plays during the opening credits. Jazz bassist Stanley Clarke composed a powerful and memorable opening theme for the movie, but for reasons that have never been fully explained, this key piece of music was mysteriously left off the soundtrack album that hit stores alongside the film's release. The main title theme is typically the centerpiece of any movie soundtrack, since it's the first music audiences hear and often becomes the most recognizable piece associated with the film. Clarke's opening theme for Passenger 57 was a dramatic and foreboding composition that perfectly set the tone for the action thriller, featuring the kind of tension-building orchestral elements that make viewers feel like they're about to witness something intense and dangerous. When Epic Records released the official soundtrack on both CD and cassette in 1992, fans who wanted to own the complete musical experience of the movie were left disappointed. The album contained 18 tracks of Clarke's score, including pieces like Just Looking Good, Fight, and Chaos on the Tarmac. But the one track that moviegoers remembered most clearly from their theater experience was Nowhere to Be Found. The missing main title theme remained unavailable to fans for years until Clarke finally included it on a later compilation album called Stanley Clarke at the Movies. This collection gathered together various film themes that Clarke had composed throughout his career, and it was only then that Passenger 57 fans could finally own a copy of the opening music that had been stuck in their heads since seeing the movie. The omission remains unexplained, though it's possible there were licensing issues, space constraints on the original album, or simply an oversight during the production of the soundtrack release. Fact 8. Airport demolished after filming. The filmmakers of Passenger 57 captured some of their most important scenes in a piece of aviation history that was literally demolished just after they finished shooting, making their footage the final record of a significant military facility. The former Naval Air Station Sanford's distinctive combination main hangar and control tower served as a key location for many crucial scenes in the movie, but this historic structure was scheduled for destruction immediately after the production wrapped up filming. Naval Air Station Sanford had a long and important history as a military installation before it was decommissioned and converted into what is now known as Orlando Sanford International Airport. The base originally served as a training facility during World War II and continued operating as a naval air station for decades afterward. The main hangar and control tower represented the classic architecture of military aviation facilities from that era, with their distinctive design reflecting both functional needs and the engineering standards of mid-20th century construction. When the Passenger 57 production team was scouting locations in the Orlando area during early 1992, they discovered that this historic building was perfect for their needs, but was also living on borrowed time. The airport authorities had already made plans to demolish the old Naval Air Station structures to make way for more modern civilian aviation facilities, but they agreed to let the movie production use the buildings for filming before the wrecking ball arrived. The timing worked out perfectly for the filmmakers, who were able to shoot their airport scenes in an authentic military aviation setting that added realistic details and atmosphere to the movie. The control tower sequences and hangar scenes all took place in this genuine former naval facility, giving the film a level of authenticity that would have been difficult to achieve on a studio set. Within months of the film crew packing up their equipment, the historic hangar and control tower were gone forever, making the movie an accidental documentary record of this piece of Florida aviation history. Fact 9. Real pilot plays hijacked pilot. The filmmakers of Passenger 57 achieved an unusual level of authenticity by casting an actual commercial airline pilot to play the captain who gets overtaken by Charles Rain and his terrorist crew, creating a situation where a real pilot was acting out every pilot's worst nightmare on screen. This wasn't just any actor pretending to know how to fly a plane. This was someone who actually spent his career in cockpits dealing with the real responsibilities and pressures of keeping passengers safe at 30,000 feet. The pilot came from Rich International Airlines, which was the same company that provided the actual aircraft used for all the exterior shots throughout the movie. This partnership between the production and the airline created opportunities for authentic details that would have been much harder to achieve with just studio sets and hired actors. Having access to real airline equipment and personnel meant that the cockpit scenes could feature genuine procedures and realistic reactions from someone who understood exactly what it would feel like to lose control of an aircraft to hijackers. Rich International Airlines' cooperation went beyond just lending their planes and pilot for the production. The company provided the Lockheed L-10-11 TriStar aircraft that serves as the main setting for most of the movie's action, giving the filmmakers access to a genuine wide-body passenger jet rather than having to build expensive cockpit mock-ups or rely entirely on studio sets. The casting of the real pilot added an extra layer of believability to the hijacking scenes, since his reactions and behavior in the cockpit came from someone who genuinely understood aviation procedures and the serious responsibility that comes with being in command of a commercial airliner. While most passengers watching the movie probably couldn't tell the difference, industry professionals and aviation enthusiasts would have noticed the authentic details that only come from having actual airline experience behind the performance. Fact 10. Mirror image helicopter shots. Eagle-eyed aviation enthusiasts watching Passenger 57 can spot a telltale sign that several helicopter scenes were digitally flipped in post-production because the aircraft registration numbers appear completely backwards on the side of the helicopters. This mirror image effect creates an impossible situation where the official identification markings that are required on all aircraft appear as nonsensical reversed text that would never be approved by aviation authorities. All aircraft in the United States must display their registration numbers in a specific format and orientation as mandated by the Federal Aviation Administration. These numbers, which typically start with the letter N, followed by a combination of numbers and letters, serve as the unique identifier for each aircraft and must be clearly readable for safety and regulatory purposes. When filmmakers flip footage horizontally during editing, these registration numbers end up appearing backwards, creating an obvious visual clue that the image has been reversed. The decision to flip helicopter footage usually happens during the editing process when directors realize that the aircraft is flying in the wrong direction for the story's geography, or when they need the helicopter to appear to be moving from left to right instead of right to left to match the flow of the scene. Rather than going back and reshooting expensive aerial footage with helicopters and pilots, it's much cheaper and easier to simply reverse the image digitally, even though this creates the registration number problem. In Passenger 57, multiple helicopter shots show this backwards registration number issue, particularly during the scenes where aircraft are flying over Louisiana. The reversed numbers are most noticeable during close-up shots where the side of the helicopter is clearly visible to the camera. While most general audiences wouldn't notice or understand the significance of backwards registration numbers, pilots, aviation mechanics, and aircraft enthusiasts immediately recognize this as evidence of flipped footage, making it one of those movie mistakes that only experts in the field are likely to catch. Fact 11. Wrong federal badges. The props department for Passenger 57 made a significant law enforcement mistake when they equipped the FBI agents escorting Charles Rain with the wrong type of federal badges, displaying U.S. federal marshal credentials instead of the distinctive FBI shields that real agents would carry. When the agents flash their badges to identify themselves as FBI personnel, careful viewers can clearly see the silver star with circle design that belongs to the U.S. Marshals Service rather than the gold shield that would be carried by actual FBI agents. This error is particularly ironic because the movie accidentally got closer to reality than the screenwriters probably intended. In the real world, prisoner transport duties like escorting a dangerous terrorist from one city to another are typically handled by U.S. federal marshals rather than FBI agents. The Marshals Service is specifically responsible for protecting federal courts, transporting federal prisoners, and managing the Witness Protection Program, making them the agency that would most likely be assigned to move Charles Rain from Miami to Los Angeles for his trial. The FBI, while certainly involved in capturing terrorists and conducting investigations, usually hands off prisoner transport responsibilities to the Marshals Service once the arrest has been made and court proceedings begin. So while the movie's script calls these characters FBI agents, the props department inadvertently used the badges of the agency that would actually be doing this job in real life. The visual difference between the two types of badges is quite distinct for anyone familiar with federal law enforcement. FBI agents carry gold-colored shields with the distinctive FBI Eagle logo and text, while U.S. federal marshals carry silver star-shaped badges surrounded by a circle. The Marshals' badge design dates back to the Old West era, when federal marshals were the primary law enforcement presence in frontier territories. This kind of prop mistake typically happens when production designers don't research the specific details of federal agencies and assume that all federal badges look similar, not realizing that each agency has its own unique design and color scheme. Fact 12. Arsenio Hall mix-up reference. One of the most memorable comedic moments in Passenger 57 involves an elderly white woman who mistakes John Cutter for popular talk show host and comedian Arsenio Hall, creating a moment of mistaken identity that would later inspire a clever reverse reference in another television production. This scene occurs when Cutter is trying to blend in and avoid detection by local law enforcement, but his plans get complicated when the well-meaning woman approaches him with enthusiasm, clearly convinced she's meeting a celebrity. The mix-up reflects the kind of awkward racial misidentification that was unfortunately common in the early 1990s, when some people would confuse any two black celebrities simply because they shared the same race, regardless of whether they actually looked similar. Wesley Snipes and Arsenio Hall had very different physical appearances and career paths. Snipes was building a reputation as a serious, dramatic, and action actor, while Hall was known for his late-night talk show and stand-up comedy. But the elderly woman in the movie doesn't seem to notice these differences. This scene caught the attention of television writers years later when they were working on the martial arts police drama Martial Law, which starred Sammo Hung and featured Arsenio Hall in a supporting role. The show's writers decided to create a playful callback to the Passenger 57 scene by having Hall's character experience the exact opposite situation. In the Martial Law episode, a woman mistakes Arsenio Hall's character for Wesley Snipes and tells him how much she loved his performance in Passenger 57. This reverse reference created a perfect circle of mistaken identity humor that connected the two productions across different years and different formats. The Martial Law writers were clearly fans of the original Passenger 57 scene and wanted to acknowledge it while giving Arsenio Hall the chance to experience the same type of celebrity mix-up from the other side of the equation. Fact 13. Art of War book foreshadowing. A seemingly throwaway prop choice in Passenger 57 accidentally created one of the most perfect examples of unintentional foreshadowing in action movie history when John Cutter is shown reading Sun Tzu's ancient military strategy guide, The Art of War, during his flight to Los Angeles. This brief scene, which was probably just meant to establish Cutter as an intelligent and strategic thinker, ended up predicting Wesley Snipes' future career in a way that nobody involved with the 1992 production could have possibly planned. 8 years after Passenger 57 was released, Wesley Snipes starred in a film literally titled The Art of War, playing Neil Shaw, a United Nations covert operations specialist who gets framed for murder and must use his tactical skills to clear his name. While the 2000 film was only loosely based on Sun Tzu's philosophical work, rather than being a direct adaptation, the connection between Snipes reading the book and his earlier movie and then starring in a film with the same title, created an unexpected link between two different phases of his action movie career. The original Art of War is a 2,500-year-old Chinese military treatise that focuses on strategy, tactics, and the psychology of warfare. Sun Tzu's teachings have been studied by military leaders, business executives, and strategists throughout history, making it a logical choice for a character like John Cutter, who needs to think several steps ahead of his terrorist opponents. The book emphasizes winning through intelligence and planning rather than brute force, which perfectly matches Cutter's approach to defeating Charles Rane and his crew. The coincidence becomes even more interesting when you consider that both movies feature Snipes as a security expert who must use strategic thinking to overcome seemingly impossible odds. In Passenger 57, he's trapped on a hijacked plane, while in The Art of War, he's a fugitive trying to expose a conspiracy, but both roles require the kind of tactical mindset that Sun Tzu's teachings represent. Fact 14. Crew visible in plane reflections. The shiny metallic surface of the airplane in Passenger 57 turned into an unintentional mirror that captured multiple shots of the film crew and their equipment, creating several moments where viewers can spot cameramen, landing mats, and other behind-the-scenes elements that were never supposed to be visible in the final movie. These reflections appear throughout various scenes, but they're most noticeable during the dramatic moments when bodies are being thrown from the aircraft and during close-up shots of the plane's exterior. The most obvious crew visibility occurs during the scene where Charles Rane demonstrates his ruthlessness by having the pilot's body thrown out of the plane to show law enforcement that he means business. When the camera shows the body falling from the aircraft, careful viewers can spot the reflection of film crew members holding a blue safety mat inside the plane's fuselage. This landing mat was obviously positioned to ensure the stunt performer's safety during the fall, but the airplane's polished metal surface acted like a giant mirror that revealed the safety equipment that was supposed to remain hidden. Another clear example happens when the boarding stairs are being positioned against the plane during the hostage release scenes. The curved bottom section of the aircraft reflects either a cameraman or crew member who is standing in a position where they shouldn't be visible to the audience. The reflection appears on the right side of the screen and moves in a way that makes it obvious this is a person operating equipment rather than just a random shadow or lighting effect. Additional crew reflections can be spotted during various exterior shots of the plane throughout the movie, particularly when the camera is positioned at certain angles that catch the fuselage at just the right lighting conditions. The airplane's surface essentially became an accidental behind-the-scenes documentary, showing viewers glimpses of the movie-making process that the editors either didn't notice or couldn't remove without reshooting expensive airplane sequences. Fact 15. Steven Seagal's competing choice. Steven Seagal found himself in the unique position of having to choose between two major action movies being offered by Warner Brothers in 1992, both featuring the popular Die Hard formula of a lone hero fighting terrorists in a confined location. The studio presented Seagal with Passenger 57 and Under Siege at the same time. But the filming schedules for both projects overlapped so completely that he could only commit to one of them, forcing him to make a decision that would impact both his career and box office history. Seagal was riding high on his early action movie success at this point in his career, having established himself as a martial arts action star with films like Hard to Kill and Marked for Death. Warner Brothers clearly saw him as the perfect fit for either project. Passenger 57 would put him on a hijacked airplane, while Under Siege would trap him on a battleship taken over by terrorists. Both scripts offered the kind of limited location action scenarios that had proven successful since Die Hard revolutionized the genre. After considering both options, Seagal chose Under Siege, the battleship thriller that would pair him with Tommy Lee Jones as the villain. This decision seemed logical at the time, since Under Siege had a bigger budget, a more established supporting cast, and the appeal of naval military action that matched Seagal's tough guy persona. The movie went on to become one of Seagal's biggest commercial successes and earned Tommy Lee Jones an Academy Award nomination. However, the irony of Seagal's choice became apparent when both films were released in the same year and ended up competing directly against each other at the box office. Passenger 57, starring Wesley Snipes in the role that Seagal had passed up, opened at number 1 and actually knocked Under Siege out of the top spot. This meant that Seagal's own decision had inadvertently created his biggest competition, and the movie he rejected ended up defeating the movie he chose.